Getting live.
It's good on the day of the brand new video. Today is an exciting day. It's 54 years since Doctor Who first aired on the BBC back in 1963. So today, to celebrate that little cool snippet, we are reviewing An Unearthly Child, the very first Doctor Who story. I've just went away and watched it for the first time properly. I think I've watched clips of it before, but I've never really got into it. I'm not really a classic series person, so I mean, I do jump between them, so I've made some notes, I've watched it thoroughly, and I enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it, but I'll get to that in just a moment. The episode opens with the time vortex intro type thing, same as it's always been, but very classic, very retro looking, and it just feels great. It's like a very nostalgic sound hearing that tune for the very first time. It comes into a shot of a policeman walking past the foreman's junkyard thing, the big blue doors that we all see. Not blue because it's black and white. There's a shot of the TARDIS in the junkyard before cutting to school, where we meet two of the characters, Ian and Barbara, both of which are teachers at Coal Hill School. They're both talking about a student called Susan Foreman, a 15-year-old girl who is a bit strange. There's a few flashbacks that they have in the episode where it just goes to different classes, where she's sort of like outwitting them and stuff, and they obviously are concerned about her. She's mentioned having a grandfather, and Barbara apparently looks into where she lives, followed it there, and it's just a junkyard, and she's like, hey, she can't live there, that's impossible. There's a lot of different things in the episode. Pretty much they go to the junkyard, see Susan go in, and they try and explore before they meet the Doctor and end up going inside the TARDIS and travelling through time and space. A few things that I loved in the episode I'm going to just mention out now. It's how raw it was. It was weird. There were a few moments where obviously they slipped up the line, but they just kept it in, and it just adds a more human element to it. You know, people don't always get the right things. People don't always say the right things at the right moments and such like that. So it's nice to see a little bit of difference in that. And I don't know. It's odd. It was really weird because it's just seeing this thing that's now 54 years of age. Just before me, and it's like almost intact. It's beautiful, brilliant piece of filmmaking. It's very nostalgic to watch. You know, I haven't watched many of the classic series, so please, if you want to recommend some, please leave them in the description. I'd love to watch them. When I've got some time, I might have a little bit of a gander. In terms of this episode, I loved William Hartnell's performance as the Doctor. He's just brilliant. He's so stern and miserable. And the thing I love, and it's hard because they obviously didn't plan it back then, but by the time, even by the end of Hartnell's era, he softens up a bit. And I feel like this is him right at the start, when he's just left Gallifrey, and it's his first time on Earth, is the vibe you're getting. He doesn't really understand the culture, he doesn't really know it, and he's talking to Susan about that, and he just wants to sort of leave. It was Susan who wanted to go to a school on Earth, and the Doctor didn't, and he's miserable. He's really aggressive and sort of, not, I won't say violent, but there are a few moments in it. I think Ian sort of is a bit aggressive. He sort of like wrestles the Doctor a couple of times, which is weird because it's just odd to watch on screen, like sort of middle-aged man wrestling an old man to the ground. It's a bit odd to watch, but I liked it. I love William Hartnell's performance as the Doctor. He's a brilliant part of it, and I think it just adds to the sort of overall experience of the episode. The acting as well, it's not perfect, but it's good enough, and I love that. I love all the characters in it, probably apart from Susan. Not so keen on her. Maybe I need to watch some more episodes to really understand her character, but either way, I liked it. I liked the reference to John Smith, which is only just touched upon, but obviously that's been picked up in the newer series. The more you watch of the old series, I think you'll probably appreciate the newer series more. They mentioned like a band that Susan was listening to, and the stage name for one of the members of that band was John Smith, and they mentioned that in the episode. There's this weird painting scene which I didn't really get. Susan was just sort of sitting painting something. It was never really explained what that was. So cool. I didn't really need to be there though. it's pretty much established that Susan's a bit of a smart ass when it comes to some sort of things, but she's very stroppy and a very typical 15-year-old as well. She claims that she's 15. I don't think she is 15. I believe she's probably about like hundreds of years old, probably. Well, not hundreds of years old, probably about 50, maybe to 100, I would say, at this point. Due to just Time Lords and that sort of thing and the way they work anyway. What I think, was it the 49th century? I didn't make a note of that one. I think it was she was born in the 49th century or something like that. So I mean, that is the first episode, and it places a date on when she was born, which probably places a little bit of a date when the Doctor was born as well, which is quite interesting to think about, because you're never really given a time zone much on Gallifrey, so that's good. I love the Doctor's just ignorance towards the whole thing. He doesn't want to, you know, he's obviously like, I understand where he's coming from. It's sort of like, if you let them go now, they'll tell the police and, you know, we'll never be able to come back here. And in a way, that's true. And I feel like the more he does come back to Earth, and obviously this time he spends as the third Doctor with UNIT, that obviously develops, doesn't it? And that's like less of a concern. He makes a bit of a name for himself, you know, people know him. And I really like that in a way. I think that's clever how they've developed that over the years, and back then it's very, very different. It's very different to how modern series work. The Doctor pretty much kidnaps the teachers. That's how it happens. He says he's going to let them go. Oh, he also electrocutes Ian. That's a thing. I want to see that in the modern series. The Doctor just electrocuting a companion. Ian goes to try and open the doors, and the Doctor flips this little lever, and Susan goes mental as Ian touches it and gets an electric shock and collapses to the ground. Finally, yeah, the Doctor does. He kind of kidnaps Ian and Barbara, which I think is quite funny in a way. He just sort of like goes and, you know, there's this cool shot which I really, really love, and I wish they'd do this in New Who as well. I mean, it would be a bit too complicated, but just every now and then, maybe with a new TARDIS design, go back to it. You know what I mean? There's a shot where you see, obviously, I think it's Susan's face, and so you see the time warp coming over the top of that. It's a bit retro, but what I do like is this scene where it zooms into the little monitor screen that's in the corner of the TARDIS, and it shows like the city of London sort of getting like smaller and smaller and smaller, sort of insinuating how they're just flying away from it and coming into the time vortex, and that's brilliant. I just love how that looks and feels, and obviously the time vortex sort of changes that until they're suddenly on a different planet, and it shows Barbara like in a chair, like knocked out, which I think is quite funny because that's never happened since. But yeah, honestly, I quite like the way it works. I think it's just a good episode, really, isn't it? It's hard to really judge it, and I'm not going to judge it. I'm going to give it full marks, but because it's the very, very first one, and if this didn't go well, then nothing more would go well. You know what I mean? And I think this was the original that started it all. You're introduced to the Doctor in the best way possible. Susan's good, and Ian and Barbara are just great anyway. The show has been lovingly stitched from this point, and especially when you watch An Adventure in Space and Time, which is the Mark Gatiss biopic on how this episode and how Doctor Who started with William Hartnell. It would be great to, like, if you've watched that, you'll understand how, you know, the story behind it. There is a big story behind it. And I think this really, I don't know, just watching this for the first time, I know I probably should have watched it before now, but watching this properly for the first time was something so unique and different as an experience. And I think, especially as a reviewer who's never actually watched any episodes of Classic Who, I believe I've watched, no, I don't think I've watched any. I don't think I've watched any full episodes of Classic Who. Possibly the Tom Baker one, I think, but that's pretty much it. I've never really watched that, and I think for someone who's like me, who's went back now, I'm gonna find disappointing special effects, but for the time, that's impressive what I've just seen there, and I'm pretty happy with what I've watched. I think it's a very good one. I kind of want to own it on DVD, to be honest. And that's pretty much the end of my review. That's 9 minutes. That's pretty good. Thank you all so much for watching. Tell me your thoughts on this episode in the comments below. Happy 54th birthday, Doctor Who. Subscribe if you haven't already. Please check out the charity fundraiser stuff in the description below. And that's pretty much it. Thank you all so much for watching. Bye.